pumps. If we can get that extension
We're
for another
live
10.
now.
Right.
Okay.
Sorry. All right.
There's
We're back.
back to order.
You'll be all
And
right.
you're on the fire department
Last
budget.
but not least.
Right. For listening public, we are now at fire. Welcome, sir.
On fire. All right. Thank you. So this was a little interesting process for us this year. We had two of us that built this budget. And as you will go through, you'll notice that there are some additional lines in this budget that hasn't been in previous budgets.
Let's start with you. Give us your goals, please.
Sure. The goals that we have set up is basically right now is just two basic ones, and one of them was the recruitment of more personnel. And one of the ways that we're hoping to do that is increase the community involvement. Take advantage of the events that happen within the community. For example, Moxie Day. Instead of just standing around and doing our one event, try to get more involvement with the community, doing things like fire extinguisher demonstrations and trainings, doing the informational booths, trying to get into the schools and doing things like that to try to get the word out that we need people. If you didn't see the news, Owl's Head Fire Department put a big sign up that says, hey, we need people, and we might close if you don't volunteer. We're not that desperate yet, but we have 42 members on the department, but not all 42 show up at the same time. We average about a third of that number between two stations on calls. So we need to increase the manpower that we have. That's goal number one. Goal number two is our first responder program. Currently, the way it's operating, and we have made adjustments since these goals have been put in place, but initially the way this was going off, if we were dispatched for a medical emergency, because those emergencies not available, it was everybody on the fire department show up if they're available, and they're all getting credit for the call and getting paid for the call, whether they're licensed EMS providers or not. And one of the things that we did was basically said we can't afford to pay 20 guys to show up for a call when only the licensed people should be going on the call. So that's already been adjusted. But that's just one of those few things. And if I have visions in my mind of how we can proceed in the future, and I'm not talking next year, but 5 years down the road, to streamline that a little better. That involves other infrastructure type stuff for that happens. So those are the items that were set up when Deputy Robitaille and I set up the budget.
And your goals are reflective in what we actually see with the budget here.
The goals that we have set up have $0 signs attached to them, so it doesn't impact the budget.
Okay, I guess the question within the question again then would be, I'll pick a topic like training or staff development.
Yes.
Does that reflect that we've got a reasonable amount here to be able to accomplish what you need to do if you get bodies to be able to join the fire department?
As of right now, I would say yes.
Okay, that's what we need to hear, either yes or no, to be able to start with that for the discussion. Thank you.
Start off with the wages have been increased a little bit to $150,000. That number was increased from the 146. The current pay stats we currently have in place, we've only had 1 year of this program in place of how we're paying the firefighters, and we still don't really have a good idea on how that number is going to play out. And when this was brought up at budget time, we're looking spot on and coming across those numbers. But when these numbers were originally come up, the 2018 budget was proposed, we still don't have an idea of how much time guys are putting in. With the laws in place, when these guys do things, they have to get paid. And what we weren't seeing was all the unseen hours they're putting in outside of calls. The maintenance, running trucks back and forth to vendors that get repaired. things like that. And not to mention, our call volume is always slowly increasing. So what we had to increase that a little bit to help cover that cost, because we're projecting another increase in call volume next year.
Okay.
So
You answered my question there. Is okay, if you didn't have any baseline, what's our call volume look like to be able to know that if we're on target or not?
So we're already ahead where we are this time last year on call volume.
Okay.
Mileage was increased, was put back in. I don't really think I need a full $300, but that was a number that got put in. One of our vendors we utilize is in Vassalboro. So sometimes people are utilizing the personal vehicles because the other vehicles aren't available, and tolls. So it's one thing we didn't take in effect. Those big trucks, they don't always give us the free reign to go through the turnpike. Sometimes they do, a lot of times they don't. So guys are paying the tolls out of pocket and coming back with receipts. So this was to cover things such as that. If I go, so as we go down to the 5140 and 5141 lines. The 5140 was traditionally the fire chief uniform line, which is where you see in the 2018 budget it's $550. And if you look at 5141, it was traditionally $2,500. And the way that was labeled was uniform cleaning. And what the previous chief did was the uniforms that he purchased for the firefighters, their Class A uniforms, was that line. So what we did is we put all the uniforms in one line. So the 3,500 reflects upon the Class A uniforms for the firefighters and the uniforms for the chief. The cell phone line has been reduced down to $420 as a reimbursement line versus paying for a separate cell phone for the fire chief. And we had 3 air cards hooked up in computers we were paying for, which have not been in use. So that was taken out. The diesel line has gone up. Right now, I'm in a negative balance on the diesel line. The budget was based off a price that ended up not being realistic when the fuel bid was awarded this past fall. So we had to increase that, and that's based off of our usage and what we predicted for the fuel price.
Yeah,
Price fuel.
The 5272, the sewer line didn't increase. Would that naturally increase with the increase in the sewer?
We looked at that at the beginning. I'm going to look at that again, though.
I see you did increase the water. I mean, it's significant, but I mean, the sewer was actually almost the same increase, right, percentage-wise?
19%.
It was kind of a weird thing when, for some reason, the fire department budget was almost hit with a total sewer bill right off the bat at the beginning of the year. So I've been in a negative from September.
Yeah, there's a reason why that didn't increase. Lydia, I'll get that
I was
explanation.
just kind of curious. It seems, I mean, I do understand that a lot of your water that you put in goes to those places. Right.
But there was like he said, there was an error that's affecting it, and so I don't think it's going to be an increase this coming year, but I'm going to check.
Right. We left the gas alone. The gasoline, the vehicle that uses the most of the gasoline had been parked most of the year, wasn't getting utilized. So not knowing exactly what the usage was going to be this year, we pretty much, the gallons left alone, but the 1,900 was based off what the gallons was for the years before. So it's a very little increase on the gasoline. 5345 is the repair and maintenance of equipment. We had to increase that by a couple of $1,000s. That includes things like our annual pump test, annual ladder test, the SCB flow test. A lot of these are required things we have to do for the NFPA standards.
Where have you been the last couple of years on that? Have you actually overspent that the last couple of years?
Yeah, I'm going to overspend it this year.
So, I mean, is it realistic? I mean, I know just one repair on a truck could actually eat up that whole budget.
Yeah.
I mean,
when this was written, we were doing pretty good, but since this budget was proposed and written, we've had some pretty significant repairs come in that was not planned.
As the fleet gets older, I can't imagine the repairs are going to get less, but I'm just kind of curious. I mean, so where are you, And I guess that's not really my department, but in a sense, where are you actually taking the money out of that when you spend that?
It will come out of the capital project down below the 5460, and whatever's left in that at year end will go into that reserve account.
Is that where most departments actually put that as far as for the, when I'm thinking of, preventive maintenance, if you want to sound, the idea of oil changes, brake jobs, general overlook, grease and that type of stuff as one budget line versus the idea of major equipment repairs. I mean, I'm not sure if that's, I know it's overspent every year because it's.
Yes. Likely for us with Public Works, the things like oil changes, things like that actually come out of, they do the labor at their rate, and they pay their guys out of their own normal budget, and we're just paying out of the parts line.
So when we look at Public Works Department, that actually their labor isn't broken up for any individual, it's basically just based on their labor hours.
Yeah.
Now, the point that I just heard that I'm not comfortable with is under budgeting equipment repair so we can continually rob a capital projects account that actually is intended to pay for a significant investment in apparatus that we're going to be short when the time comes to pay for that bill. One of the things that I've seen in my 2-year history here is the fact that the fire department has not always done an adequate job associated with maintaining apparatus and training on our employees. That those two key things, I would rather hear from you what a number should be in that equipment budget and work backwards to make it work there rather than rating a line that actually is a much larger piece that's supposed to pay for a piece of apparatus that we're not going to have. We already know we're going to have to go out to bond. It's just a question of how much, because it's been either significantly underfunded or rated for purposes for what it was never intended to be.
Right.
We can also, if you want, we don't have to take it from the 5460. We can run the other one in the red. I think he'll have enough in his budget so that the whole overall.
I
budget
get last year you had to,
Yeah.
because last year you had nothing else to be able to cover the
Right.
deficit that was actually within this department, but that was the anomaly. That's
Right.
not the rule. So by all means, that is not where I want to live, ever.
Yeah, with the current budget right now, I was reserving one of the other lines, trying to plan for the overdraft from that line.
Okay.
But it's
For next year, associated with repairs and maintenance, is $24,000 adequate for what you need?
after dealing with what occurred over the last 2 months, I'm really not sure if that's going to be enough. And
Give me a number.
And unfortunately, see, we're at 22 and we're already going to look at overdrafting. I'd probably say another $4,000, another $4 to $5 grand, probably $30,000, because some of the big ones have been. Right now, I look at that budget.
Has there been any years over the last 4 years that hasn't been overdrafted, the repairs and maintenance? I mean, overspent, or?
I'm not familiar with what.
It just always,
She
even
had-
back several years ago, that was a line that was just, that always abused. It's hard to take millions of dollars worth of equipment.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
only
The
spend
numbers-
20,000 on them, you know, but.
The numbers that I have for 2015 was 22,836. 2016, as reported, was 13,854. 20,305 for 17.
And I guess maybe the idea.
I don't know what the budgets were then.
Isn't
Well,
the idea?
that's it right there. You don't know.
I don't know what the budgets were.
Well, 2017 was 22.
Yeah, that's the only one.
So
That's the only
we
one we
have-
do know.
Right.
I guess that's probably, this year, maybe you did bring it up, it's at 24,000, and maybe this year,
What
it may be a task to actually.
what scares me, and I'll be honest with what scares me, is the big maintenance we've had has been on Truck 6, and they've been on things that could go wrong with his sister or cousin truck on the other side of town, same age truck with the same components to it, and those are the things that scare me a little bit, because if you buy two cars at the same time, when one thing goes wrong, chances are it's going to happen again with the other.
You have those, any way to actually, to analyze those, whether or not they are coming up or potentially could be a concern. I mean, I realize transmissions and stuff you can't actually just look at and magically know, but.
Unfortunately, I rely upon the expertise of the mechanics public works, and the trucks go down and get evaluated to let me know what's what's coming down the pipe.
Can you give me an example? Because you just said truck here has these issues that I've had to budget for, and I have a cousin truck at the other
Right.
station. Tell me about some of the problems specifically.
The brakes. The front end of those two trucks is a proprietary suspension system for the manufacturer, and they had the same braking system in them. So they both have that same thing.
So, and me being just who I am, a very general knowledge of auto. So there's no scheduled maintenance for these to kind of
They go
look at
through.
and say,
They
all
go.
right, we'll do the brakes at this point.
They go through Public Works.
So it's just their assessment at every X number of miles sort of thing? Or?
Yeah, they go down there for their annual service and things like that. Yeah.
Okay.
We've always, and not picking on anybody, but traditionally a lot of times it's actually reactive versus reactive. I mean,
So that's what I'm trying to get
instead
at
of totally
right now.
disassembling something, and something is, if it's working correctly, you just make sure it's adjusted properly versus, and again, I'm not speaking for everything on an average, but
Yeah.
it's a big piece of equipment. It's nothing that you pull in 5 minutes to actually analyze what brakes are. You mean it's typically something goes wrong, and then you say, oh my God, look at that. You know, but
That's what I mean. And not knowing, that's why I asked the question to say, is this something that can be caught through a routine maintenance? You know, like me, my car, I know that roughly after X number of miles, I should probably go get my brakes. But you know what will be the trigger is usually the squeaky noise of that little thing inside, you know, making that noise against. I'm not quite metal to metal, but you're getting close. Might be time to do something. That's usually when you go and do it.
did Public Works end up doing the full repair on the brakes on that unit, or did that get actually brought somewhere else?
The front brakes they did.
Yeah.
The rear brakes, what happened on that truck on that time, it was at East Coast in Casco when they found the problems, and the truck was there, and it was unsafe to drive on the road, had to be repaired.
And when you're talking brakes, you're not talking $300-400. You're talking these were at $10,000 plus repairs, right?
Yeah, this
Or
was $6,000.
6,000
Yeah.
for the.
Well, actually, that's kind of misleading because that actually the $6,000 bill included two, the repair that it was originally there for, and the brakes.
Yeah.
Midas and Meineke don't have a bay big enough for us. That's what you're saying?
Yeah. I guess analyzing, moving forward, I mean, I would leave the number you have in there just because I hate throwing numbers not knowing, but the idea of maybe getting a better handle of where we're going to be maintenance-wise.
Right, and we've actually had, I've already even started conversations with the new Public Works Director about trying to get some other stuff in play.
Typically, if you have something break in one truck, you pull apart the other one and look at
Right,
it and
the-
see if it's
one of the
somewhat
other-
decent, you know, but.
There's a lot of things on both these trucks and components, from chassis related to emergency vehicle related, that are the same. And a few weeks ago, we had a fire over on River Road. The pressure governor that controls the ingoing outgoing pressure of the pump went. And that was a $2,000 part, not including labor to install it. It's the same exact thing on engine one. So it's a
Matter of time.
matter of time.
Where are those trucks at? Are they already past the half-life, restore, refurbish, and are they?
Yeah, they've already.
They're in their second leg.
They're on the second leg right now.
Okay.
Yeah. They went back to the manufacturer in Wisconsin and had to go through under Chief Gallipo.
Okay.
And again, you can't foresee the future, don't get me
Right.
wrong, but in a sense, anything
Especially
we
with
can
these
do to try to.
electronics.
Yeah, especially anything we can do to do preventive maintenance is kind of key, but.
Thank you, Chief.
Absolutely. 5347 is a new line. What you'll see is 5347, 7172 were items that were originally under the operational supply line, and it was all jumbled into one account. And what we found, it was hard to figure out where the money is coming from to keep track of what we're spending in these areas. So we broke it down a little bit. So radio communications. Remember last year, Chief Gallipo put that in there as needing to keep our pager and radio program moving to replace antiquated equipment. And we got it started this year. We want to keep maintaining that. So we added the 5347 to tractor radios, and that's at 8,300. Last year, that was at, for the radios alone and pages, was around 20,000. The 5371 is our foam. We didn't have a line in our item for foam, and we use a lot of foam in this community. And it costs, we buy it in 55-gallon drums, and it's about $800 per drum, and we average 2 drums a year. That's not including any big fires. We've already had 3 in the last 4 weeks. And this also includes purchasing of forestry foam, and we do carry a little bit of Class B foam within the town as well. Ems Supplies, that's at $1,500. That's to maintain the equipment we're using for the first responder program. And the PPE, or personal protective equipment, before it was just kind of jumbled in either the equipment or the operation supply line. This is strictly turnout gear. The boots, the jackets, the pants, the helmets, the hoods. We were at the point where we were replacing 2 sets of gear under the last budget is what we had. Our gear is starting to get old. Some of the gear is 10 years old. If you remember the article in the paper and the news that came up a few months ago in the town down south, it is not a state law that we replace gear at 10 years old. However, it is an NFPA recommendation that we replace gear between 5 and 10, and mostly it's upon inspection of the gear. We have some guys who have gear that's 10 years old, which is fine. We have other guys who have gear that's 5 years old, which needs to be replaced. We have 4 sets out getting repaired right now. So this number reflects 2 sets of gear. We're at the point we have to put at least in the budget with 5 sets of gear. This will also include outfitting any new firefighters we may bring in. Because you're looking about $1,500 just for the jacket and coat, and not including helmets and boots. Operational office supplies is at the same. And then 5380, the 2018 budget, that was 24.6. That's now down to 10,000, and that's pretty much going to be covering all the incidental costs that we occur during the year. Things like the small things that usually don't fall into the overall budget, things like going to Aubuchon's or Napa and things like that we have to do throughout the year. Parts, tires. Tire line for the past previous budgets was at $0. We haven't been carrying any money for tires. So this $2,600 carries us a set of 4 tires for the trucks and some snow tires for the chief's car, the cruiser, which is still using pursuit-rated tires in the wintertime.
Perfect.
The equipment line was put in undesignated funds. Most of the equipment that we're going for this year is either one-time purchase or one every 5-year purchase.
So could you explain that? Because the initial it was 24,200. Then actually the first request was to 34,200. Then went to 0. So
that's all under undesignated fund balance
So
now.
try to
So
actually
you've got,
One-time purchase.
yeah, if you look under fire, he'll explain what they are, but it totals at 34,200.
Yeah. So what there are things like the air bottles have a 15-year life, and then they have to be discarded. That's a DOT regulation, and we have 3 bottles that are expiring this year. They have to be destroyed, and the ones that we have, they're about $1,300 a piece. We have to get 3 of them. The command center for the back of the chief's car, one-time purchase.
What is the command center?
A command center is put in the back of the vehicle to organize the back of the vehicle, so it's more functional when trying to run a command of an incident. So have things to put the command board in, have radios in the back, so that everything's right there and organized. So it's
mobile office. You flip tailgate down.
Yeah,
you
there's
everything
even
you would have back
there's even no filing cabinet drawers. So if you have incident action plans available to you,
Okay.
you can get them pretty fancy or pretty simple. I'm thinking simple. And then there are things that had been put in the budget in years past that have been not purchased because of one budget reason or another, and that we had requested a positive pressure fan last year. We've held off because they're $4,000 a piece, and when we got a hold of the budget in September, we already dipped into that line that had that into it by quite a bit before we saw it, so that we were afraid to get us to the rest of the year. We weren't going to have the money there. So we're at the point now, 2 years ago, one positive pressure fan was what we needed. Now we need two because they're the same age. They're 20 some odd years old. There's tools in there. The next item, again, was swift water waste equipment, which was put on hold because we were afraid of the way the budget was looking when we got a hold of this budget. And then another pump that was put in there that was purchased. There are grants in place right now we're waiting to hear back from that could offset this as well.
Return out here, hopefully.
No, actually, we actually submitted for the firehouse sub grant through the firehouse sub foundation.
Oh,
Good.
we
That's
didn't
great.
get that
Oh,
one.
we didn't get that?
No.
Oh, okay.
But
But still, well, it's still something that they do quarterly.
Yep.
So keep
doesn't hurt.
going for it. Yeah.
Without getting too specific, but answering my question,
Sure.
which is probably not going to work. You just spoke to $24,000 worth of budget items that are in this year's fund balance recommendation for the fire department for line items that were overruns last year in the budget. Where did the money go?
What if I pull out last year's budget request for operational supplies? The last year's budget request was for 24,600, and in that line, he had CIP items that totaled 24,600 for equipment.
Okay.
So, but he didn't cover any incidental costs that comes out of that line. So we're already $8,000 by September. We're already $8,000 into that amount.
Were they unbudgeted items that were actually paid for?
The unbudgeted, the items we're requesting for this coming budget.
No. The fact is, we're seeing it for year two for something that should have been paid for last year. What what bumped? What was the change in priority?
Surviving, I guess. A lot of the money that was coming out of that line was day-to-day operational costs. And I had this conversation with the town manager when this came through, is yes, things need to be replaced, but we have to make sure we can cover the other costs of the operational stuff to replace equipment that is still operational, but even needs to be replaced.
Okay.
And that was, it was a priority. It was trying to weigh the priorities of what was going on at the time.
The dark corner that I just traveled to in my mind is, are we going to be seeing this again next year, or the fact is the budget that we actually have reflected that we can stop that trend?
Hopefully we can stop. I don't know. Hopefully we will stop that trend.
Okay.
This is the reason why I did it the way we did. We broke it up.
To be able to see the item.
See where the money's coming from, where it's going. Yes.
Okay. I'm comfortable with that answer.
Yeah. Because it was confusing. It was confusing to Deputy Robital and I trying to read the budget as the way it was written, and we had to take it to face value, and that's what we were running into. That's why we went through adding different lines to see where the money was coming from and where it was going.
The 5,000 on professional development, is that actually adequate to do what you need as far as for yourself and the rest of the department for training and stuff?
As of right now, yes.
So it should work.
What else everybody else seeing?
It's different this year. We'll see how it plays out next year, right? That would be the key.
Yep.
Any other questions of Chief? I'm not hearing any. Thank you, sir.
Did you guys want to talk about Engine 2 in the CIP?
I know what I heard. Where was it slotted originally?
2025.
Where does it need to live?
It needs. We actually have to look at the entire plan. This was talked about a couple years ago with Chief Gallipo, that we don't think the original plan that was developed in 2003 is going to work out. Engine 2 needs to replace probably in the next couple of years, so at 20-year mark, so 2020.
I'd strongly recommend the idea that since we have a new chief on staff to look at all the equipment and actually do a full analysis of where we are, where we need to be, and come up with a new plan that we're there. Knowing that, things may change, whether 5 years out we come to a single station, what would that look like? Do we need more equipment, less equipment? Or if we're not going that route, what do we need for equipment anyways, and see where we're at? I mean, equipment's changed over the years.
Yes.
Since that plan was put in place, the type of equipment and what it looks like and what it actually does has changed a lot. So.
Right. Engine 2's function from the time it was purchased to what it's doing now, its task has changed. It's actually doing double duty. It's now become our water hauler. It's our tender, which used to be the job of Tank 9. And with the loss of Tank 9, it's now doing those duties, which the truck was not designed for. So it's really not functional for that job. It does the job, but it's not very functional to do that job. And one of the big reasons that really forced our hand in moving this up in the CIP was Leland Gamache, who's the engineer for that truck, who does all the monthly and weekly checks on it, came back and said he's starting to see metal flaking off the frame. I crawled onto that truck this morning, and over the rear tandem axle, you're seeing a separation in the frame liner from corrosion. It's starting to split.
Is it just between seams or actually splitting?
Well, it's separating in the seams between the the inner and outer frame.
Start seeing that public works trucks in like year 2, so no, I mean, just salt is bad.
So,
I mean,
right. So it's the start
seams
of
you can't control.
it's the start of a frame issue.
Yeah, but I'm just, it's fairly common on anything that's on the road quite a bit. I guess it would be one of those things it would be actually good to get a good analysis of it versus.
Absolutely, and it has not seen, has not gone through a professional evaluation as of yet, and it should. Probably all trucks should.
Where does that come from?
We can go to any of the emergency.
Or where does it get paid from?
Oh, wait, paid from at that point in time?
Yeah, if we're talking about advocating and looking right now, where is that in your budget this year?
This year, I'd probably,
If the answer is no, where do we need to put it?
yeah, I would probably put it.
Under vehicle repairs?
Yeah, I'd probably put it under the R&M of 5345.
And what does that run per vehicle?
That I don't know. I have to actually.
Can you get back to us through Diane to be able to give us an
Assessment.
idea on that? Because the number one goal that I would say for you coming in on this is if we're looking at what you have for the capital improvement plan, the assessment of what your plan looks like right now, what you're recommending, because we need front-end information on that, because as soon as you don't have enough in that account, we got to go out to bond, because there isn't anything you're going to put in service that's going to be under the $250,000 rule.
Yeah.
And we need permission from the public,
Absolutely.
and we need the information to be able to make them understand why it's in their best interest.
Yep.
So yeah, if you could work that's going to be key.
Yep.
Anything else?
Good.
You ended on a downer.
Hey, no, it's just one of those things where we just live in a very.
Yeah, no, it's a very good point.
We actually live in an area that if you see stuff we kind of find every day, you'd be surprised.
We'll try to come back for the next week's meeting to have that amount to do the
Got 7
professional
days.
assessment. Yeah, 7 days.
7 days.
And
Ready,
also
set, go.
the outstanding items on the police department. The only one question I have for you is the only other discussion point in the budget under assessing for that part-time position, future discussion.
Oh, that's right, the assessing
Yeah.
part. Yes,
Well, we got assessing and we got planning board, the 21,250. That item too.
Thank you,
Those are
Chief.
the only
Thank you,
other-
sir.
Chief.
I have a question for you on the fire budget though while we're right here. I mean, it's not crucial, but come in.
Don't leave.
The water usage we have, the bill is that actually filling trucks at station? Or
Is that
just,
what now?
Is that filling trucks at station, or is that actually just bathroom, washing hands?
There's actually meters
Yes.
on the stations, including filling the trucks.
I mean, my perception of what we pay the 30% of the water is for fire protection. Why is that only limited to what comes out of the hydrant, not actually what we put in our trucks at the stations? I mean, that's a maximum, we're paying the maximum amount allowed by a municipality to pay for its water, which is 30% of their total operating budget. I don't know why we pay for it coming out of the station to fill our trucks different than we fill coming out of hydrants, because it's already prepaid amount.
So you're filling it from the station?
Yeah, there are hoses in the station. We fill the trucks up at the stations.
I just don't know why. I mean, it just seems like if it's for fire protection, it should be covered underneath that 30%, that almost $280,000 we pay a year.
I don't
Should
know
cover
if
that too.
But again,
at
it's
one-
just a hypothetical question, but
At
I know
one-
you wouldn't have the answer
Yeah,
because it's.
at one point in time, I know at the fall station, at one point in time, the meter was on the other end of the fill line. So it was only for domestic water use,
Which it
not
should
for,
be,
not
I would
for the
think.
fire truck use. But when they put the new meters in, it went on the other end.
I
So
guess
your
I would
question is
argue the
why,
point.
if we're already paying whatever that,
Why is it metered at all?
right, or why aren't we filling it with the hydrants?
That
It's
can
just not convenient. That being
Right,
during the
that
winter,
could be
yeah,
done
you
in
wouldn't
July,
want
but it can't
anybody
be
to
done in
have to
January.
tap into the hydrants, but it's just one of those things where I know the
That'll be a
Discussion-
question for the water department.
discussion always used to be that 30% was for fire protection, which is the overall budget of the water department. And to me, it should be the same cost whether we're coming out of a hydrant or going into the truck at the station.
Right.
I knew that all changed
Right.
years ago, but
I'll check on that.
it's not substantial, but
This
it's
is a
money.
float this on the topic of water. I've heard it said that it's a morale killer that we no longer allow firefighters to wash their vehicles at the departments. Is that true?
30 or 31% instead of 38.
It was in the initial stages, and I know that we weren't the only town that initiated that ruling. That when it went into effect in this town, it went into effect in numerous towns across the state at the same time.
Like a 6%.
But yeah, I mean, there's some with some people it was
I'll check.
it
Get the
killed
answer.
some morale.
I was just curious. It just seems like a big
The,
number.
the reason I ask is because it seems to me if we're trying to build, actually, I don't care why they're at the fire department. If they're already there, our response was going to be better. If it's cost of water associated with that, one of the cheaper commodities that we can do, it seems like a really small miscellaneous employee benefit that we can reinstitute.
Yeah.
I might want to consider reversing that position. And if you could delve into that and see if there's any traction to it, what the cost would be, I'd be at least willing to hear that topic out.
Yeah, I know that was done above the department head level.
Yeah.
So,
I know
or as far as cost, as far as
Yeah, but if it's still a huge hardship associated with that, we don't need to be creating reasons to be alienating the volunteer fire department.
Before we head out, I have a question about the town planner line.
Run.
Where is there any way that we can, where she does, according to what they're saying, work through economic development? Is there any way to use TIF money to fund that position?
For planning.
We can't. There's
Not
no
even
way.
though some of the projects are headed down this way.
We can't use it for planning services. Because the economic development budget is funded through TIF funds. It's not, you can't use those TIF funds for planning, but that doesn't mean you can't use it, one of the other TIFs.
That's what I'm saying.
Right.
Is that what you meant? I was thinking the economic development budget, because that's funded through well, you know what? We probably can once that's,
That's it.
Yeah,
That's
that's
it
right,
right there.
'cause
See, that's it. Okay.
once you approve that and it goes up to, because I think there is planning. Well, look at that.
So 6 one way, half dozen another.
Right,
But
right,
ultimately,
right.
if we could find a way to find the TIF money to support the 21, we like what it can do, but then we'll like it a whole lot more if it's coming from somewhere that's.
Yeah, I'll look, let me.
I mean, it would
let me
only
look
make
at that.
it would only make logical sense if it's part of
If it's future
economic
planning.
development and planning kind of coincide together. They are one and the same.
Right, now that we're doing the development plan over, there's probably an opportunity, but the way it stands right now, you can't.
Right, but we're
Now
setting
with
up
the
that.
amendment that we're gonna do.
Right, that's what I'm saying, is with the amendment, we still haven't designated what we plan to use that money for. So,
All the stuff she would do would be down,
this
end
neck of the
town,
woods, right.
It would be in the zone there.
Assessing part-time position.
Yes.
You believe in it?
Yes.
How much is it?
Bottom line. Bottom line.
We really need to have somebody
You
in
can
that
find someone
office. and we-
qualified for that money, I'm all for it. I just
It's
have
mostly
a-
Well-
it's just clerical.
yeah.
It's just there to help. It's not like
Stays.
they don't need to be licensed.
But she's looking for
No,
someone to actually
but-
lean into her position, so, I
But
mean.
the other thing that you can do, because you talked about that, well, we talked about adding another we talked about it to Lydia, adding 20 hours more to that and have it a split position. So if you did that, you would add another 41,000. That's with the worst case scenario with
benefits and
benefits.
stuff,
Yeah,
full health.
yeah, because that's 22,000 of that is health. Yeah. So if you did another 20-hour position and hired somebody full-time, 'cause it's going to be a lot easier hiring somebody full-time than part-time.
I think I'd want to see
But
how
would
that's
we-
laid out a little bit, but, I mean, just more of what the job description would be, because that's,
You got it. You got a yes to this. Come back to us on the.
Well, now,
Oh.
are you saying now it's 40, 40
Yeah.
It would be if you made that, but it wouldn't all come out of that budget. It'd be split between finance and that.
Yeah.
Because remember you
like
had that
salary
discussion.
wise, or are we talking about like budget wise, like overall bottom line?
2020 is what you're saying.
Yes. Overall impact to this budget, if you added another 20 hours and made a full-time position that was split between finance and assessing, you're adding another 41,000 to the budget. That's the worst-case scenario.
on top of the 14 that's there.
On top of the 14, yes.
So it's like a $55,000 position with benefits, I mean, but part of
With
that's
benefits.
insurance.
Or we can just stay with the 20 hours and see what we can get.
I want-
I think
Hold
we're
on.
gonna.
This
We still
year?
haven't talked about an IT position yet, too. That's what I'm a little leery to
I
go.
want to. I want to
full-time.
live here with assessing right now.
I'd rather do the just
Just
part-time
the
for now.
part-time? Okay.
Just see how
Part-time
that
right
plays out, because I mean, Kathy's either going to say it really helps or it don't, or,
Hold on.
Plus, if we get to that point, we're looking to groom somebody to ultimately fill the role, right?
Yep.
That gives Kathy the chance to kind of let us know if she's found the right person.
and I'm with them. When I hear Lydia talk about needs, it's IT, it's people, someone to actually be able to do something on the technical side of it. But
Diane is going to have it for next meeting's agenda. We don't have another discussion associated with budgets, so she is going to give us an update on anything we talked about with the police department to be able to have it be in her manager's report next meeting. So we're not adding an additional meeting, but the end game is circling in associated with this budget at this point.
Closing the loop is what you're saying.
Yeah.
finalizing.
Yeah,
I have a question related to Norm's suggestion about the IT person. If we did hire a full IT person, could we scale back the amount we spend on contracted stuff to outside people? Because
To round table?
right, 'cause we used to have
I think
a
that's
full, we used to have a
yes.
full-time IT person, and we lost him, and then we went to paying somebody else, and,
we're
and
still
then that
gonna
got to
have-
be a lot more than we were paying the person inside.
We're still going to have to pay some
something,
contracted,
right? I mean, I
contracted,
know
but
for
it
backups
wouldn't be
and
that.
stuff, but if we could save a lot of money, I expect there if we cut that back.
I'd say we
The
spend it
goal
well
would
over
be to get somebody
80,000.
who comes in and could become our expert, who understands, it's better to farm these services out just because of the nature of that type of stuff versus somebody says, I can handle this in-house. And then we get somebody who has that ability to understand what their strengths are and what they can do in-house, not just for the town side of things, but for maybe even the police side, from the maintenance perspective, to help them stay trained, but not necessarily be all up in their business. Because, if Police Chief Hagan brings in his guy to get those folks up to speed and he cross-trains them, then it's just going to be a matter of doing updates and things that the IT guy will know how to do, but they'll know the specifics on how it relates to IMC, I think it's called, or whatever it is. They know all the nuts and bolts to relay to their teams. That person's just going to get the new package in place, get it up and running, and then say, it's all yours, run with it.
So what do you need for time before this budget's over for a recommendation on IT?
Was that you?
Yeah.
I didn't feel a thing.
I'm meeting with
Sounded
Lydia
well.
and Diane on Friday. I would like to think that we'll be able to do at least some preliminary, get some stuff together, put a bow on it if we have to by Monday. Does that sound reasonable?
So add it to the same discussion?
If it doesn't sound reasonable, Diane, now's the time.
No, I'll talk to you about it on Friday.
Okay, let's do that.
Okay,
So yeah, we'll try to have it ready in place for next Tuesday.
please.
Yeah.
Because that's the last piece that we haven't gotten into whatsoever.
Okay.
Right? Anything else?
Yeah. We're at the end almost. Woohoo!
Yeah.
So anyway, we can cut 5% of the total budget. Can we start?
Yeah.
Wow.
That's that. Gives us
Should have bought you a
discussion
candy
before.
bar earlier because
Speaking of
that's the
IT
hunger
firm, I
talking
owe you
there.
a motion, and I'm sorry.
Yeah.
No problem.
Motion, second.
Did you get anybody
We're
else?
out.
No, yeah, no.
Okay,
I'm
then
actually.
Dropping trash, Norm.
I'm doing my first move. I'm actually Fairpoint next month. Okay. I mean, not Fable, but we're getting cable.
You're getting cable?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's good.
Yeah.
So if you get those guys coming, they're coming next month?
It's June. They got to build the system because there's nothing down there.
Yeah, so they're going to have to, okay.
Yeah.
Once you get that going, if you know some immediate jump.
Still